The following program was funded in part by Toyota, AT&T, Baldwin Richardson Foods, Lincoln Financial Group, American Airlines. A complete list is available at thehistorymakers.org. Born in Washington, D.C., she would become one of the most respected mezzo-sopranos of her time. Her name, Denise Graves. From the Metropolitan Opera to international opera houses and stages around the globe, her career has been legendary. The History Makers, the nation's largest African-American video oral history archive, is proud to present An Evening with Denyce Graves. And now to our host, award-winning actress, Angela Bassett.
Denise Graves is a wonderful woman, an amazing performer, and a good friend. She stands on strong shoulders. Denise's elegant stage presence and her rich vocalism are wrapped in a casual girl next door demeanor.
S'il lui convient de refuser, en effet, mais dans sous prière, l'un parle bien, l'autre se tait. C'est l'autre que je préfère. Il n'a rien dit, mais il me plaît. Il n'a jamais, jamais connu de loi. Si tu ne m'aimes pas, je t'aime. Si je te dis, je vivrai. Go sailing on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go sailing on the mountain, and Jesus rises home. Go sailing on the
One of the most gracious divas of the day, Miss Denise Graves. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's always so good to see you, and I don't
too,
get to see
Angela.
you as often as I'd like because you travel the globe all year, every year, in and out.
It's pretty busy,
It
but I'm
is.
having a good time.
We're going to have a good time
Yeah.
tonight as well. Denise, do you remember the occasion on which we met?
Well, I do remember when we met. We met at church.
That's right.
You were a
That's
friend.
right.
We went to church together, and we came to meet you at your home on Sunday morning, and then we went to go eat a gigantic brunch afterwards. I remember that.
That's right. I was new to opera, so it was like my introduction. And yes, a dear friend introduced us, and it was wonderful. And I've been to opera ever since. Whenever you're in town, and you come often, and I love it.
Thank you.
I also remember once seeing you at a state dinner in your hometown, Washington, D.C., many years ago. And I was fortunate enough to sit at the table with the vice president, and I looked across the room, and there you were, and you were sitting next to the president. And I wasn't jealous, I was proud as can be. And here we are, next to each other tonight. Now, let's go back in time a little bit. You were born, Denise Antoinette Graves, in Washington, D.C., 1964. Could you give us an indication of maybe the sights and sounds and smells of your household then?
I remember the smell of cooking, you know, of fatback cooking and collard greens, and the smell of hair frying with the curling, straightening
The pressing
comb.
comb, yeah, sounds familiar, smells familiar.
Yeah, and the sounds of laughter, you know, less machinery, more human noises, less cars and that sort of thing, more people walking and laughing, and girls jumping rope outside and that sort of thing.
Roller skates and playing
Exactly,
tag
and bicycles and all that, yeah.
Now, you're one of three.
I am.
You have an older brother and a younger sister.
I do, I'm sandwiched right in the middle.
Right, and
Yeah.
we have another thing in common. I was raised by a single mom, and you were as well. Do you think about that at times, what you may have missed, or wonder about that?
We had a great time. My mother also was a lot of fun, you know. She used to play Superman with us, and yeah, and football with us all the time, and she read us stories, and she was a terrific mother. So
I know my mom, growing up, she was, of course, the disciplinarian, and she would say,
She was that
in
too.
those moments, I'm your mother and your father too.
Is that right? Right.
Yeah. And I know you did have an occasion of meeting your father later in years.
I did.
And
I did
tell
later
us
on.
about that.
We were outside taking photographs, and my mother, we were all standing there, was my brother, my sister, and some family members. And my mother said, oh my God, oh my God. And we said, what? She said, do you see this man walking towards us? Yeah, that's your father. What? Oh my goodness. So that was a pretty, and then we decided to have lunch together, which was rather strained. But I was glad that I remember thinking he was short and wore glasses. I thought, you know.
Could he sing?
He could sing.
Okay.
According to my mother, that's how she met him, and that's how she fell in love with him, is that he was singing sort of in a barbershop quartet thing on the corner with a group of guys, and he had a lovely voice, so I think that that was his great gift.
Was your
to me.
mother, can your mother sing as well? Does she?
She here.
I won't ask her to.
She has the great love of singing.
But there was a lot of music growing up in your home, though.
Growing up in our home, my mother is deeply religious and only allowed gospel music in the house, and so we heard, you know, Shirley Caesar and Mahalia Jackson and all those great James Cleveland and the Mighty Clouds of Joy and all the time. And so, and my mother also sang, and she still does sing quite a lot. And so music was very, very present and very much a part of our of everyday living.
I remember hearing from you once that not everyone, you know, thinks singing is the greatest thing at all times.
Oh, you
and there was
remember the
an
story
occasion. Yes,
Right.
yes.
Well, I was a young girl. I don't know how old I was, maybe, I don't know, 8 or 9, and I went for a pajama party at a girlfriend's house, and I remember we were sitting at the table, and I was singing, and her mother said, how rude, you know, don't you have any home training? You're singing at the table. And I thought, how sad that you don't.
Well, music took on a serious note in your life early on. Let's take a look at the videotape.
Okay.
As a young girl growing up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the nation's capital, Denyce Graves wore her own brand of confidence. Noticing her middle child's voice, Dorothy Graves encouraged Denyce to sing in her Pentecostal church. In the future, Denyce's gospel singing would be rendered in a classical style.
Come on, get happy. We're ready for the judgment day. The sun is shining. Come on, get happy.
But it all began in 1979 when a tall, thin girl realized she didn't quite fit on Galveston Street. Denyce auditioned and was accepted to the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. At 14, Denyce discovered a recording by Leontine Price in the school library. She cut her classes and listened for hours. As Leontine Price sang, Denyce remembers saying, "I can do that." When voice teachers heard her potential, Denyce Graves began the journey to develop her awe-inspiring gift of song. From the Duke Ellington School of the Arts, scholarships would lead to Oberlin College from 1981 to 1984 and the New England Conservatory from 1984 to 1988. But before settling in at the nation's most prestigious opera house, doctors would advise the young vocalist to stop singing to save her voice. It seemed like an early curtain call, but a year later, the Houston Grand Opera began to pursue Denyce. During a 2-year apprenticeship, she worked roles in the chorus, learning the role that would one day become her own. Denyce Graves became known as the new mezzo legendary tenor Placido Domingo had found. The girl with the voice from Galveston Street was back, and the rest would become history.
How about that? Leontine Price was an inspiration to you.
She was the inspiration.
Tell me what
Absolutely.
it felt like and when was it that you heard her voice and how that made you feel.
I was 14 years old, and I was late for a class, and I was running in the hallway, and I ran into a girlfriend of mine. This was when I was a student at the Duke Ellington High School, and she said, "Denyce, you've got to come hear something." I said, I can't, I'm late for class. She said, no, you've got, I just have heard the most beautiful thing that I've ever heard in my life. And so I went with her to the listening library, and we cut our classes the entire day and listened to Leontine Price sing. And I remember we never went to the bathroom, we never ate anything. I said, I would love to do that. To have, I mean, it really felt like I found my purpose in life, and it absolutely did direct the whole of my life from that point on.
Up until that time, you were, as you said, you sang mainly gospel and
Mainly
in
gospel
church.
music in the church.
And
That's
the
right.
bus ministry.
That's right. You remember that? That's right.
Right. Tell us about that.
Well, in our house, my mother was very, very strict. She still is, actually, very strict. And each night of the week was designated for something. So Monday night was sewing night, and Tuesday night was book report night. And that was in addition to our homework. Because she was working all the time, she wanted to make sure that our time was constructive, the time that we had away from her. And so she would assign us, you know, projects after we finished our schoolwork. Anyway, Thursday night was music night, and we'd write songs and that sort of thing, and we would perform them for her when she came home. And we started getting sort of good at that. And so we formed this little singing group called the Inspirational Children of God, and we went around and we sang in different churches on Sunday. But also, in addition to going to church, we weren't allowed to just go to church. We had to participate on a deeper level with our involvement. And so I was involved with the bus ministry, and that was basically speaking to parents and encouraging them to allow their children to come to Sunday school on Sunday mornings, and then we would go pick them up on the bus, on the church bus, and take them to Sunday school. But while we were on the bus, we sang songs and that sort of thing, and so that's what my job was, to sing the songs on the bus and entertain all the kids on the bus while we went back and forth to church.
Now, you've sang gospel then, opera now. What difference is there between the two in the training? At that time, you were at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts, which is very renowned high school, junior high school there for the arts. I have other friends from D.C. who've gone there, and they're quite talented. So a lot of great people come out of there. Yeah, but that's where you began to move from gospel into opera. What was that training like?
Classical music is such a refined art form. I think what's challenging about it is to maintain that initial desire that attracted you to music making in the first place, because you can become so analytical of every note that you sing that it can rob the joy of music making.
You're concentrating on the technique of it so that you can get away from the passion of it, what drew you in the first place.
I think it's really, that's the great challenge when you're actually learning to study the voice and learning what proper singing is and how to make beautiful, beautiful sounds, because that's what classical music is the art of beautiful singing. And there are lots of rules that go along with that. And so one has to, I think, stay in touch, because I believe that at the end of the day, and I am one of those opera singers who enjoy going to the opera. And even though I can hear people spin beautiful tones, and I appreciate that, and I can appreciate the gymnastics and all the virtuosity that goes into refined music making, for me, still, at the end of the day, I think that it's what moves people and touches them that brings them back to the opera house. So I think that it's important to stay connected to that, even though all of the training can sort of strip that away. It can do that.
After graduating from high school, from Duke Ellington, you went on to Oberlin School of Music.
That's right.
How did you get from DC to Ohio?
On the Greyhound bus, actually. Yeah, sure, that was a long journey. In fact, I had two professors at the Duke Ellington School who were alums of Oberlin College. Neither one were my professors. One was an oboe teacher, and one was a flute teacher. But they had been very supportive of my work. They told me about Oberlin College and said, Denise, you have to go to Oberlin, you have to go to Oberlin. And I went as a prospective student.
What was it about Oberlin that drew you there?
Well, I didn't know in the beginning. I just went because they said it was a fantastic school. And later, I learned all these wonderful things about the university, how it prides itself on this first university to accept African American, first university to accept women. It was a conservatory filled with all the weird kids. It was all the kids that everybody picked on and teased, and it was the kids that enjoyed music and enjoyed practicing and that sort of thing. And I think that there are a few times in your life where something rings true. People often speak of that when of their spouse. They say, the first time I saw this person, I knew that we were going to marry. And it was that same sort of recognition inside of my soul that the moment I was there, I walked into the conservatory, I thought, this is where I'm supposed to be. It felt right. Everything said yes.
How many
years
did you spend there?
Well, I spent 3 years there. Okay. I ended up getting my degree from New England Conservatory. Oberlin College at that time had a mandatory age retirement. And I was studying sort of with the hot voice teacher. And when I was there, I was asking everybody, when I was there as a prospective student, I was asking, who's the great voice teacher? Who's the teacher that everybody wants to work with? And I kept hearing this name, Helen Hodem, Helen Hodem. And so I met her while I was there, and I asked to sit in on a couple of voice lessons while I was there. But she had been such a draw for the conservatory for so many years.
Yes.
But she was sort of a mysterious age. And they had been enforcing this mandatory retirement for some of the other professors. And since they were enforcing it for other professors, they said, look, you can't do this for some and not for others. But because she had been such a drawing card for the conservatory, it was difficult for them to let her go. In the end, she was forced to retire from Oberlin College and then went to teach full-time at New England Conservatory. There were about 14 of us who left Oberlin College to go to New England Conservatory to continue studying with her.
To find a professor, a leader, a teacher for such a delicate, such an important, your voice is so important.
Exactly. Yeah. As we were saying before, you only get one set. I mean, you can buy a new piano, you can buy a new clarinet, but if you get that wrong, that's it. And so it really is about the relationship that you have with your voice teacher. And that is a very special one of great intimacy, and that requires great care. And when you find a relationship, I believe where there is an atmosphere of freedom, where you feel like you can experiment, and that you trust them also with your instrument, and you're not afraid of your instrument in front of them. I think it's one that you should hold on to, and that's also building the voice. I mean, she was a great voice builder, and I was making great progress with her, and I didn't want to interrupt what we were doing, particularly for my final year there. To go to another voice teacher who says, "Oh no, that's all wrong. You have to do it completely different." Yeah, start all over again.
No. You're at the beginning of your career. And of course, it was made possible by those who have come before you. And just for a moment, I want to look back at some of the work and how it paved the way for your success.
In 1990, the humble, legendary contralto Marian Anderson would present Denise Graves with the Marian Anderson Award, symbolizing her kinship with the African-American divas and classical singers that came before. Ciceretta Jones, whose operatic work was only accepted through minstrel shows. Classical vocalists who trained without open venues for their work. Opera stars such as the regal, internationally acclaimed soprano Leontine Price, the dramatic, risk-taking Grace Bumbry, the celebrated, majestic voice of soprano Jessie Norman. These legendary vocalists paved the way for Denise Graves. For its 1995-1996 season, Denise Graves would make her debut at the Metropolitan Opera in the title role of Bizet's Carmen, coming in, as she would later say, through the front door. She would work often with Placido Domingo, even performing at the Royal Opera House in London. Many opera houses and patrons across the globe developed a passion for Denise Graves' Carmen. The sought-after mezzo-soprano would also become known as the lead in Cézanne's Samson and Delilah. With an expanding repertoire, Denise Graves joins legends, becoming one of the most respected classical vocalists of our time.
I love that photo of you and Marian Anderson.
Me too.
You were a baby then, and you had on some grown-up earrings.
Did I really?
You did.
I was so grateful, and am so grateful that I had the opportunity to meet her and to spend time with her. I just won the Marian Anderson Award, but as a recipient of the award, you give a concert at her hometown where she was living at the time. And Sylvia McNair, who had previously won, was giving a concert that evening. And when that photo was shot, I said to her, "It's cold out here. Do you need something around your shoulders?" I remember that very clearly.
I know what Broadway means to the actor. What does the Metropolitan Opera House mean?
I think that every opera singer is looking at that house as sort of the standard, as the mother of all houses, and that if you're invited to sing there, if you work there, it means that somehow you have arrived. I think that concept is held by lots of different singers. I don't think that that's true. It's a magnificent house, and I'm honored to work there. Here in Chicago is a magnificent house as well, Chicago Lyric Opera, and I'm proud when I'm here, when I'm able to work here. But I'd been singing for years in Europe as an artist before I was invited to sing in the Metropolitan Opera, and there are lots of fantastic opera singers that may or may not be household names who do fantastic, wonderful singing actors and actresses who have never made their Metropolitan Opera debut for whatever the reasons may be. And that doesn't make them any less of an artist than some of the names that you may know. So while it is a great honor to work there, there are also lots of other wonderful houses.
Around the world.
Around the world.
And when you love it, it doesn't matter where you sing.
That's right. That's right.
You love it.
Yeah.
There was a time early in your career when you thought maybe it was cut short, that it possibly wasn't going to happen. You lost your voice.
That's right.
Do you remember how? Do you remember why? Or is it still a mystery?
Not anymore. At the time, it was a great mystery. I had won the Metropolitan Regional auditions in New England. And in between that time, it's sort of like the Miss America pageant, and they go around to all the different states, and they have this big competition, and whoever wins from that region goes on to New York for the nationals. And so I won from my region of New England. And in between that time, there was maybe a 3 or 4 month period before the national finals were held in New York City at the Metropolitan Opera. You stay there for 1 week. You coach with the coaching staff, with the whole music staff that they have there. You prepare for one huge concert. And then from that, the judges make their selection of maybe about 10 singers. And it was in this little window. I sang great for the regionals, and I won. I had to win.
Why?
I
Why is
had to.
that? Why'd you have to
I was
win?
going to get evicted from my apartment. I was.
Was there a cash prize?
There was a cash prize.
Oh, okay.
And I said, I had one roommate who just sort of walked out and she disappeared. And everybody was sending in their rent separately. And we found out later that we're like 3 months behind. And so we were getting ready to get evicted. And I found out about this competition, and it was a cash prize. And I said, I'm going to go win that competition. That's what I'm going to go do.
I got to keep the lights on.
I got to. That's right. Got to keep the lights on. I sang and I sang well, but in between that time of the regionals and the nationals, I completely lost my voice. I completely lost. It was the craziest, most mysterious thing ever. What happened with me is that it became gradual. Something was wrong, physically wrong in my anatomy, that I saw 7 different voice doctors, and nobody could figure out what it was. They saw a tremendous amount of phlegm on the vocal cords, and the body's so perfect that if there's something wrong, the body produces more phlegm to protect the cords. And so I kept saying that the more that I sing, the worse it's getting. Which was true, because the more that I was singing, the cords weren't well, and they weren't in a state of wellness. And so the more that I sang, it created more phlegm to protect itself. And so that's why the sound kept getting, and so I just completely lost the sound. And I saw all these doctors, and I saw even a witch doctor who told me somebody put a curse on me.
Looking for answers in every corner. How did you feel emotionally at this time? I mean, singing had been such a great part of your life up
Yeah,
to
and
now.
I was getting ready for
And you were
this
so
huge
close.
competition at the Nationals. And I arrived there in New York, and I was singing the first day, and Larry Stayer, who had been a great supporter of mine at that time, said, Denise, I'm sorry, this is not the voice that we heard a few months ago, and we're going to have to take you out of this competition. But I basically had to go back to Boston with my tail between my legs, and also not know what the problem was. I finally saw a doctor who realized that I had an imbalance of the thyroid and put me on some medication that regulated that, but that threw everything off.
You had to take a year off.
I took a year off, but I didn't know how long that would, I didn't know how long that would be. And so at that time, I'd already started with some small contracts, and I was very excited about that. And I had to cancel everything, and at that time, I was working full-time as a secretary.
My. Well, this is the 50th year of Marian Anderson's debut at the Metropolitan Opera. And of course, happily so, history has moved past a time when African Americans were not allowed to sing on the stage of the opera houses or even to participate as audience members. Denise, let's take a look at how you and your work are becoming a part of our future.
In an effort to educate, Denise Graves has conducted master classes preparing opera singers for the future. She is known as one of the most highly esteemed African-American mezzo-sopranos on the current opera scene. Denise Graves recently recorded with Latin American artists, bringing diverse works to the mainstream.
Quiero decirme canto como el ave. Quiero mi soledad
In 2005, her repertoire took on a new territory with the lead role in Margaret Garner, based on the novel Beloved by Nobel laureate Toni Morrison, who returned to the story as a librettist with composer Richard Danielpour. This story of a real-life fugitive slave who attempted to kill her children rather than have them become slaves tells a compelling American story. For Graves, it is a time of new challenges and making history.
Wonderful role. I can't wait to see that. Can't wait to see you and Margaret Garner. How often do new operas come along?
Well,
I mean, we often hear of the same ones, Tristan and Isolde,
Exactly.
Aida, Tosca.
right. And those are standards in the repertoire, and they'll be around forever because they're just so beloved, and the music is magnificent, and the work, I mean, they're real masterpieces. But there are a lot of new operas being created all the time, and lots of contemporary operas. The problem is, or the challenge is, making sure that those become the modern day Tristans and Toscas and that sort of thing. And I think that, I certainly hope so in the case of Margaret Garner, that's for sure. But I know that there's been there are great operas being written all the time, and people just have to hear them, and they have to come to the theater, you know.
Well, people certainly come from around the world to see you in Carmen. That is one of your, or dare I say, your signature role, and you are known and beloved for playing that passionate, alluring character. But you've also said that to sing Carmen is frustrating. Why is that?
Well, because all of the pretty music goes to everybody else.
Yeah, that could be frustrating.
Yeah, she's a magnificent personality. She's very attractive to a lot of singers because she is a personality of great allure. But from a singing standpoint, from an acting standpoint, it's also very attractive too, because there's a great emotional range that you get to sort of explore throughout the whole of the evening. But from a singing standpoint, it's very frustrating because the music is not what we say cantabile, which means singable. You know, the foil to Carmen, Micaela, gets all of the beautiful music. And also Don José gets all of the beautiful music. Carmen never has a moment alone. But certainly from a musical standpoint, for me, I find it frustrating because I think her music is angular, and it can be hard on the instrument.
If this is a hard role to sing, what measures do you take to protect it?
Fortunately for me, as we discussed earlier, and I think it is a gift when you have difficulty and when you have vocal problems, because you learn how to take care of the instrument, you learn how to care for it, you learn what not to do. And that takes a seasoning. It takes the experience of walking through it. You know, I had a professor who said to me, and it's so true, he said, Denise, you'll never be judged on your best singing. You'll always be judged on your average singing. And you have to work to get your average singing above everybody else's. And that's what the challenge is. The day that you're in like the best voice, that's the day you're at home, you know, cleaning out your closet, you know? Right. That's the day, you know, you're out at the movies and you think, God, where's Deutsche Grammophon now? Right. That's the day is what the day I need to record Carmen, you know? But it's never when you have your Met debut. It's never when you have your Carnegie Hall debut. It's not, you know, because there's so many other things that come into play. And the thing that's so challenging about being a singer is that, first of all, you can't see the instrument. So you don't know how it's doing. You know, it's sort of this animal that I wait until I go into the dressing room on the night of performance to see what sort of voice I have that evening. Oh, today I need to make sure that I have a lot of lift here, and today I have to make sure that I really get my breath low, and all of those things which are part of your good vocal technique in the first place, but you have to modify that depending on how the voice speaks that day, because it is the body, and whatever you do to the body will be reflected in the instrument itself. It's difficult for us too, because either I'm preparing or recovering from something. And so it leaves very little time to sometimes live. I remember when I was studying with my voice teacher at Oberlin College, and I went in for a voice lesson one day, and she said, your voice doesn't sound good today. She said, yo, what were you doing last night? And I said, I was out with some friends laughing, and she said, you were laughing?
Oh, no.
On the night before a voice lesson?
Not good. It's not good. Laughing is not good for the voice.
Not good, because you think that a cellist wouldn't be playing the cello from the moment that he woke up in the morning until he went to bed. But we're speaking, and oftentimes, we're not speaking as well as we sing. And by that I mean, when we're singing, we learn how to produce beautiful sounds. And we learn about placement, and we learn about focus, and we learn about squillo, and all these vocal terms that help place the voice and take the voice off of the vocal cords, because that's what you want, you want for there not to be pressure on the cords. But when we're speaking, we're laughing, how you doing, that sort of thing, and all of that's right on the cords. And if you're doing that from sun up to sundown, you're using the instrument, and that means that when you actually need it. And singing opera is heavy-duty stuff. It's major stuff. I mean, we're not singing with the enhancement of microphones and all of that stuff. It's just on the pure instrument itself. It's a natural art form. And so when you need that to be in form, it means that you have to conserve how often you're using the instrument, and you learn to take care of it. All you have to do is fall down one time really badly in an important performance and know what that feels like, to know that you never want to have to live that again. I'm still studying, I'm still learning about the voice all the time, and I find it amazing. The more that you do it, the more seasoned you become at it, and the better you become at it, hopefully, if you're singing well. And that's the great thing. That's the thing that I love the most about this business, is that you can't fake it. You cannot fake it. Either you know how to do it or you don't. It's not who you know. You've got to do the work. There's no cheating. There's no, you've got to deliver, and everybody knows.
Now, you have said, and what do you mean, that you have the personality of a mezzo-soprano?
Yeah, I don't
What is
think,
the difference between that and the lyric soprano?
Yeah, well, I'm not dying of consumption and not very fragile and one of these, sopranos who are fainting and that sort of thing. I think that my personality, my temperament is much more like a bull. It's, like this, it's stronger, I think that I could play those parts, but I think that it's, I think that my fabric, my whole makeup, physical makeup, is stronger and reflects some of those women that I portray. And they have influenced me greatly too, and I've learned a lot from them and gained a lot of strength by knowing those particular women. I think the thing that's been most valuable to me with fleshing out these particular characters and it sounds so simple, but it's the truth, is to learn to be yourself. You know, when I met Leontine Price, I'd heard so many of her recordings, and I still listen to her, and I'm still fascinated by her. But I always felt that I knew her through her voice. I always felt that she was really giving us a great gift as to who she was. And when I was invited to her home, which is the two of us girls sitting around talking, I said to her, I knew this is how you were. I knew it. I knew it. I could hear it in your voice, you know? And I think that's saying something, particularly being an African-American woman in what may be considered by some to be a European art form. I hear everything that she is in her singing. I hear that she's Southern. I hear that she's African-American. I hear that she's a woman. I hear that she has a great sense of humor. I hear that she's a great study, that she's very intelligent. All of those things, to me, come across in her voice. And I think that to arrive at a place in a business where the business doesn't always welcome you, to learn in the end to be yourself on the stage through those characters, for me, was a great achievement.
Before the curtain rises, and I'm gonna take that journey with those performers. They're gonna make me believe because they believe. Right. I believe.
Right.
When I come through the door, I'm ready and willing to do that. I'm paying to do that. So when I look about in the opera houses, I see that it's very homogeneous. There's a lot of sameness, and it's very European. And there you are on the stage.
I have to digress. When you did that, I saw that woman who burned the clothes of her husband. I was like, oh yeah, this is Angela Bassett, yeah. That's true. You all know what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, you do digress.
I love that. No, it's true.
Have you
it's
experienced
true.
racism
oh,
in
sure,
the opera world?
Sure.
How so? And what do you do about it?
I just keep singing with all the love in my heart that I can. I just keep singing. I just keep singing in the face of all that. Of course, I've experienced it, and I always will, and I think everybody always will. I mean, we're in
Have you ever been denied jobs because of it?
Sure. Sure. And I've had some general directors and intendants tell me very frankly, in which I appreciate it as well. At least I knew who was standing in front of me. So I appreciated that. And that'll, you know, I don't expect that to change. I don't. But I mean, I think that if we want change, it's us who has to change it. You know, it's an inside job. I can't do anything about anybody else and how they feel and what they think and what. Nor do I want to. Nor do I want to. My job is to sing and to sing well and to make it impossible for them to say no.
We're judged so many times because of our age, because of our girth, our size, and you have a friend who's an opera singer. And there was an incident on a stage in Germany.
Oh, exactly,
yes.
That's right. Beautiful singer. Oh, she is, I would walk on glass to hear her sing. She is magnificent. And the top is of such exquisite beauty. But she is a very, very, very large woman. And we were doing a concert together in Germany. And when she was singing, I went into the audience because I love her voice. And when she came on stage, when she walked out on stage, everybody laughed. Everybody laughed when she came out. And when she opened her mouth to sing, everybody's jaws dropped. And that's the other thing that I said that I loved about the business, is that it's so pure, it's so honest. You know, it's about the beauty the beauty of the voice, you know? And nobody could deny what was coming out of her mouth. That you knew that when she sang, you could see the face of God. You just knew it, you know?
Yes, yes.
And, but it's true that it's not just that. It's a concert. People could stay at home and listen to a CD. And it also is a theater. And we are judged whether we're black, whether we're too tall, whether we're too short, whether we're whatever. We're going to always be judged about that. I cannot, and I refuse to waste my time and energy concentrating and focusing on that. I've got enough work to do on myself, and to just keep maintaining a level of excellence. And that's where I'm focused on. So I don't care about any of that. And I just have my faith somewhere else. It's not in the business. And I believe that I say that I believe that this is a business that you don't choose. I think it chooses you. And I believe that I was called to do this. I know it. I know I was. I felt that right away. And I believe that this is taken care of, that it's in greater hands. Yes. And so I don't worry about it. I mean, I don't worry about it. And I've been confronted with it, and more and more. You know, we can speak about the great, and we have made tremendous progress, and I'm so proud when I see some of those clips of lots of other women who came before me, Erin Anderson. And when I'm there at the Metropolitan Opera or any place, or here in Chicago Lyric, and I'm walking around the theater, I'm so proud to be there and so happy to be there. But you look around and you think, well, where are the men? You know, where are they? And they're there. They exist. And one of the reasons that I'm so proud of this piece, this Margaret Garner opera that we're doing as well, is that you do get a chance to see some fantastic African-American men. I mean, everybody can sort of quote to you Leontine Price and Kathy Battle and Jesse Norman.
Baird and Grace Brumbury.
And then for the men, everybody's quiet. Well, they exist. They exist. They exist, and they're out there in greater numbers than we know. But I just believe that we just have to keep singing, make it as beautiful, and as I said, to just hold on to that in whatever it was that ignited inside of you that drew you to this in the first place, to not lose that, to remember that the business of music making is less beautiful than the art form itself, right? But to hold on to that great beauty.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what's important. And that's what touches people in the end anyway. And you can sing perfectly, and you can do all sorts of roulades and jump and do all sorts of vocal acrobat, and all that stuff is very impressive. But I think that at the end of the day, it's a person who touches you, who moves you in some way, because music has that power to express that which is inexpressible, to touch you at the deepest part of who we are. And that's why it's sacred.
Now, I know that there is another someone who has touched you at the deepest part, and this is a very new experience for you. You've become a mother. I'm sure, I can imagine that has to have changed you, informed your work in some way, and how, as a busy opera singer, a diva traveling the world, do you manage to balance the two?
Well, you know, it's like when my voice teacher said you were singing, you were laughing on the night before a voice lesson. I didn't want to miss my life in the midst of all of this. I'm having a grand time, and I consider it a privilege and an honor to do what I do that brings me so much joy and so much beauty. I would do it were people listening or not. So I'm so grateful that I am able to make a living at doing something that brings me so much joy and hopefully brings joy to others as well. But I also didn't want to miss the human experience of just being a woman and being here. I didn't want to miss that. I didn't want to miss my life by spending so much time in the practice room that, you know, I would go away on my engagements, and I always thought, when I go home, I'm going to do this, and when I go home, I'm going to do that. And every time I came, well, first of all, I wasn't going home. And then every time I came back, my nephews were so much bigger, and I thought, when did this happen? You know, I feel like the same. Last time I saw you, you were 2, and now you're 18. You know what I mean? And life is passing by, and although I still feel like the same girl,
Yes, yes.
time is passing in front of me, and I know it. And I see it even greater now through the eyes of my daughter.
After our nation's tragedy, September 11th, you were called to sing in the nation's capital for our National Day of Mourning, and you've also become and were asked to be a cultural ambassador for our nation around the world. What has that experience meant to you?
You know, when I was 15, I had the great privilege of being able to go to Germany as an exchange student. And I lived with a German family there. And that was an amazing experience. And the mother stayed at home. It was like one of these fairy tale stories. The mother stayed at home and prepared, you know, and she took care of the house and took care of the children while the father went off to work. But I remember her speaking on the telephone to a friend. And she said, "We have an American staying with us." And I said, "An American? I'm an American." I wasn't even an American in America, right? So for me, it was a great honor and privilege, because I feel that growing up, I mean, I think my life is the so-called American dream, because I find myself in an area of life that was very unlikely that someone from my upbringing would find themselves. And so, and I'm proud of that. And so I'm proud to go around as an American ambassador, because I also think that I bring a very different perspective. It's, you know, you have to go away to see what people really think about you, you know? Not everybody likes us, that's for sure. That's for sure. And, but I'm happy to sit down and speak with people and to share and to listen to them and to learn from them as well, and to try in one small way to extend the hand and to mend in some way if I can do that. That brings me a tremendous sense of pride. And then I think, now you're doing something really great with your life, Denise. You know, that's really beautiful. So that was and is a great honor for me. I'm proud, even with all of the problems that we have. I'm still very, very proud to be an American, and very proud to be an African-American woman.
Well, I can say for sure, I know that you are representing us very, very well. And I thank you. And I know you spent a great deal of time on the road, so of course we have to thank your husband, and we thank little Ella, and I'm grateful to your mother for being there for you. And thank you so very much for being so open and so candid about your life and your experiences with us tonight. I really appreciate it. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our audience has learned a great deal about opera, and just rushing out to see it whenever you're in town. And I thank you also on behalf of all those little girls and boys who are somewhere right now singing their hearts out, and you are blazing a path before them. Thank you, Denyce Graves. Thank you.
So sweet. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
For more information or to order your own copy of An Evening with Denyce Graves, please visit thehistorymakers.org or call 866-914-1900. That's 866-914-1900. The preceding program was funded in part by Toyota, AT&T, Baldwin Richardson Foods, Lincoln Financial Group, American Airlines. A complete list is available at thehistorymakers.org.